Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right, we're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
Off we go! I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
Hey friends, this is part 2 of When Mom and Dad Were Kids. If you haven't listened to part 1, run over there and listen to that one before you start this one. Hi, replied Ivy. That's funny. Those are our parents' names. I'm Ivy, and this is my brother Levi. And that slide stunt you just pulled could have ended with you getting really hurt. I'm thinking maybe you shouldn't try that again. Eric and Alexa just looked at each other, totally shocked at what they were hearing. Oh, for sure. I definitely won't try that super fun trick again. Not, laughed Eric as he high-fived Alexa. Don't be so overprotective. We're just having some fun, added Alexa. Ivy and Levi couldn't put their finger on it, but they felt like they knew these two kids. But given what they had just been through, they didn't think so much about it at that point. They were a little more concerned with the fact that they had just been transported to an alternate reality through an old board game from the 1990s. Hi, I know this is going to sound weird, but can you tell us where we are? Asked Levi. That is a weird question. Shouldn't you know where you are? I mean, you got here by yourselves, right? Where were you going? Asked Alexa. That's just it, answered Ivy as she went on to tell the two kids what had just happened to her and Levi. Wow, that sounds totally radical, exclaimed Eric. I wish something cool like that would happen to us. Totally radical, said Ivy, sounding kind of confused. Don't you mean super, Eric? No, I mean it's radical. You know, awesome, great, fantastic, said Alexa. It's just funny because we've only ever heard our parents say totally radical before, said Levi. You know, it's because they were kids in the 90s. Yeah, just like all of us, said Eric, sounding more than a little confused. What do you mean, just like all of us? Asked Ivy. It's not 2024? I guess it could be if you were some kind of time traveler, answered Alexa. But here it's just good old 1995. Levi and Ivy could have not been more shocked at what they were just told. The game they found was magic, and that game had sent them back in time. I guess this all makes sense, since the name of the game is Totally Tubular Time Travelers, said Ivy as she sat down on a nearby swing to think about how she and Levi were going to get back home. Levi, on the other hand, thought Eric and Alexa were super fun and was ready to play regardless of the year. Levi, come on, what are you doing? Asked Ivy. We kind of have a big problem on our hands. Well, you know what we say when we're having a problem with something? Asked Alexa. We say, talk to the hand. It's kind of like what you would say when you don't want to hear what's being said. That's so funny, Levi. Mom just said that to me the other day when I kept asking her to buy me some ice cream on the way home from soccer practice, said Ivy as she took a closer look at Alexa and suddenly realized where she knew her from. Alexa, did you get that little scar on your chin when you fell in your driveway running on ice on Christmas Day? Asked Ivy. Levi heard his sister's question and walked over to get a look at the scar. Once he saw it, he was shocked. Yeah, how did you know that? Asked Alexa. I had gotten a new sled for Christmas, and I slipped when I ran outside to go sledding. Ivy looked at Levi, and Levi looked at Eric. Eric, do you by chance play on a baseball team called the Silver Sluggers? Asked Levi, already knowing the answer. Wow, how did you know that? You really are time travelers, exclaimed Eric, sounding excited. That's when the four kids figured out that Eric and Alexa were actually Levi and Ivy's parents, just in kid form. I'm bugging out, said Eric, but in a good way. This is amazing. What does bugging out mean? Levi asked as Alexa told him it was the 90s way of saying you're panicking. But regardless of who was bugging out, they all knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and they couldn't stand around and let it slip away. I mean, how many times do you get to go time travel and hang out with your parents when they were your age? Since we don't know how long we have together, we better show you as much of the 90s as we can, said Eric. I have some extra bikes at my house. We can head over there and we can show you around. Sound good? Levi and Ivy nodded their heads, really excited for the amazing adventure ahead. Alexa and Eric jumped on their bikes and slowly rode along as Levi and Ivy walked beside them. Hey, wait a minute. Where are your bike helmets? Asked Ivy. Bike what? Replied Eric as he took a little bag of cookies out of his pocket. Would you guys like one? Sure, but I don't have any hand sanitizer with me, replied Levi. Do either of you? Hand what? Asked Alexa. It sounds like you're speaking another language. Just wipe your hands on your shorts and take a cookie. I can't believe what I'm hearing, said Levi to Ivy with a big smile. Once they reached Eric's house, he grabbed 2 extra bikes from his garage, and they were off. But Levi and Ivy noticed some very interesting things. Eric just quickly yelled to his parents that he was headed out again for the afternoon and would be back later. They shouted back a list of things like, be careful, watch for cars when you're riding your bike, and something about being home by the time the streetlights came on. That seemed kind of late, but Levi and Ivy just went along with it. They followed Eric and Alexa, no bike helmets in sight, and rode to a little wooden area next to the park where they worked on a fort that Eric and Alexa had been building for weeks. It housed some of their most prized possession, like their priceless Beanie Baby collection, Eric's Furby, Alexa's Bop It game, a pair of moon shoes, and a bucket full of Pogs. This stuff is pretty cool, said Levi. A little different than the video games, smartphones, and tablets we have, but still pretty cool. Wow, phones are smart in the future? Like robots that can do everything for you? Asked Alexa. Kind of, said Ivy, but kids still have to make their beds and do homework. Aw, man, that stinks, said Eric. They continued to work on the fort and talk about all kinds of things. Then everyone started to feel a little bit hungry. Eric had grabbed a bag of popcorn when he ran inside his house earlier, and they all enjoyed a snack as they explored the park. Their fun kid adventure led them to some muddy puddles, which of course they had to jump in. First Eric, then Alexa. Come on, Levi, Ivy, you're next, said Alexa. You mean you want us to jump in these muddy puddles? Asked Ivy, forgetting for a minute who was talking to her. Of course, said Eric, splashing mud everywhere. It's so much fun. So we don't have to worry about getting our clothes dirty? Asked Levi. No, that's our parents' problem, giggled Alexa as she hopped into a big puddle with both feet. Levi and Ivy didn't ask any more questions and jumped into the muddy puddles too. They were having an amazing day. As the afternoon went on, soft shades of red and purple stretched across the sky, letting Levi and Ivy know it was getting late. The sun began to set, and the streetlights that lined the road to Eric's house turned on, one by one. That's our sign to head home, said Eric. It was great getting to meet you both, said Alexa. And I guess we'll see you again. This day was totally radical, said Levi. Thank you for showing us a bit of your childhood, added Ivy. Oh yeah, before we go, Eric, I have some advice for you, said Levi. If someday soon you and your best friend are thinking of joining the circus and you want to practice juggling eggs on your parents' new rug, don't do it. Unless you don't mind cleaning up broken, gooey eggs for the rest of the day. Levi laughed as Eric gave him a thumbs up. I wonder how he knew I wanted to join the circus one day, said Eric to Alexa. And as they were saying their goodbyes, the streetlights that Levi and Ivy were standing under began to glow in a bright neon color. Levi and Ivy knew right then that it was time to go home. They waved goodbye one final time to the kid versions of their parents, and before they knew it, they were back in their playroom. The game board sitting in front of them was still on, but it quickly buzzed one last time and turned off. They sat stunned for a minute or two, not believing what had just happened. Then they hurried to put the game board back in its box, return it to the playroom closet. We need to go see Mom and Dad, Levi and Ivy said together as they ran to the kitchen. Oh, good timing. We're ready to eat dinner, said their mom as she set out some plates. Just make sure you go and wash your hands. Levi and Ivy giggled, thinking of their mom eating cookies and popcorn that day without using so much as a drop of hand sanitizer. They hurried back to the table, eager to talk to their parents about what it was like when they were kids and see if it matched up with what they saw that day. So, Mom and Dad, did you guys ever make forts when you were younger? Asked Ivy. And as she asked the question, both she and Levi could see a light in their parents' eyes, a glimmer of nostalgia, as they remembered all the good times they had together when they were young. Running through the day without a care in the world, knowing they had a loving family to protect them, and seemingly endless adventures around every turn. That is a great question. We loved building forts when we were younger, said Levi and Ivy's dad. I always kept mine stocked with my favorite toys. Like moon shoes and pogs? Asked Ivy. Yeah, exactly, answered their dad. How do you even know what those things are? Oh, one of our teachers was talking about him the other day in school, said Levi, just telling us about when she was a kid. Well, I know it will surprise you to hear this, but when we were kids, not as many people wore bike helmets, said Ivy and Levi's mom, and no one carried around hand sanitizer, so I made sure to go home and wash my hands before I ate anything. Sure you did, Mom, said Ivy, looking at Levi with a smirk on her face. We totally believe you. Then from that moment on, Levi and Ivy's parents couldn't help but fill in the rest of the dinner conversation with stories of their childhood. They all laughed as they realized in that moment that they understood each other better than they thought. As parents now, Levi and Ivy's mom and dad had a different role to play than when they were kids. Now their job was to watch over Levi and Ivy and make sure that they were always safe and protected. But they knew there would be times that their kids would need to make decisions on their own. And thankfully, they were confident that Levi and Ivy would always make the right choice because they taught them well. And Levi and Ivy always knew that no matter how many times their mom reminded them to wear a bike helmet or their dad asked them not to get too dirty, that they were doing it because they loved them so much. But after that dinner and all the talk about when they were all kids, Levi and Ivy's mom and dad started to let their kids make some decisions for themselves, allowing them to gain experience and independence, but always being there to hold their hand if they needed it. Thanks, Mom and Dad, said Levi. This dinner and all your fun stories were totally radical, shouted Levi and Ivy together as they thought back on the amazing day they spent in 1995. Hey, friends, why don't you go and ask your mom and dad about their favorite things that they got to do when they were little? Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.